So spoiler season is wrapping up with the Commander decks for Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Regardless, on this episode, I'm going to talk about a brand new commander that is, let's just say, insane. Well, insane in name and in ability. Zellix Sanity Flayer is a 2/3 horror that costs 2 and a blue. It has, whenever a player mills one or more creature cards, you create a 1/1 black horror creature token. And by paying 1, you can tap Zellix and target player mills 3 cards. And on top of that, you also get to choose a background, and if you haven't seen my episode yet on, what backgrounds are, make sure you check that out. But basically, it's kind of like a partner commander, but it is an enchantment, and this enchantment can not only help influence your color identity by giving you access to another color depending on that enchantment's color, but also it can help your commander out by giving your commander an additional effect. And of course, I'll highlight some key backgrounds that you might want to utilize with this commander, but yeah, let's focus on those abilities first. Now, there is a limitation on that trigger. Again, it says whenever a player mills 1 or more creature cards. So while this does count every single player, which is fantastic, this only is going to give us 1 creature for each player that mills a creature. So if we say have some way to mill someone for 5 cards and they mill 5 creatures, well, too bad, we're only getting 1 creature out of that. But say if we have a way to mill everyone for 5, including ourselves, and we hit at least 1 creature for each player, we are going to be able to get 4 creatures, because again, this does trigger for every single player. So ways to mill all players are obviously going to be very impactful with this commander. And of course, the more and more creatures that are in players' decks, the more impactful this commander can be as well. On top of that, obviously keep in mind that your commander can help mill players as well, and yeah, at some point you might actually be the best target for that depending on how your deck is built and how many creatures are in it as well. And of course, there are ways to more heavily utilize that ability, and we'll talk about those here in a bit. But really quick, before we jump into the cards that work well with this commander, a quick reminder. In the description below, there is a link to the list of the cards I'm talking about in this episode in case you want to, pick up some of these cards sooner rather than later, because when a new commander like this one is spoiled, that is new, unique, and exciting, well, players tend to want to build around it sooner rather than later. So yeah, make sure you check out that list. But now with all that said, let's jump into those cards. And actually, the first one that I want to highlight is the first one that came to my mind in a favorite of mine from quite some time ago, back when I dipped my foot into Modern with a budget mono-white infinite mill deck. And yeah, that's a different story for a different day. Regardless, Altar of the Brood is an artifact for 1, and it says, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Now, this card definitely needs a reprint. I mean, at the time I built around it, it was like 10 cents, and now it's like a $6 card, so Wizards, please reprint it. And yes, I will give you plenty of other options for cards that are much more budget-friendly, but this one is pretty perfect with this commander. Because again, this doesn't specify non-token, so this can go infinite. Well, okay, it's not guaranteed to go infinite, but it can definitely have the potential to go infinite or get you really close to milling everyone out, or at the very least just make you a ton of tokens. Because essentially, all you need to do to get this started is to get any permanent in play, and yeah, maybe that is just, utilizing your commander to mill someone for 3. So you mill someone for 3, you hit a single creature, and then that says, okay, Altar the Brood triggers, and now every opponent is going to mill 1. And then for every single one of those opponents that milled a creature, you're going to get a token from your commander, and then Altar the Brood is going to trigger for each and every single one of them again. So if you keep milling creatures, this keeps triggering, you get more and more tokens, and you keep milling your opponents. Now, obviously, there are going to be times where this just whiffs, and it stops, but all you need to do to get this whole thing started again is to get another permanent into play. And again, that can be any of your permanents. It can be an enchantment, artifact, creature, or, again, one of those creature tokens that your commander makes when you just mill someone with something else. So yeah, for 1 mana, this is an incredibly deadly card with this commander, and yeah, Wizards, please reprint it. It is quite a spicy card, and it deserves a reprint. And 3 more cards that definitely need reprints. Mesmeric Orb, Mindcrake, and Altar of Dementia. Mesmeric Orb says whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. This can be absurd with this commander as well, and yeah, I mean, just even counting lands. Just players untapping their lands, is going to have a massive impact with this. I mean, keep in mind that this is going to trigger off of every single permanent becoming untapped. So if someone untaps, say, 5 lands, that's going to be 5 separate triggers, and then, yeah, for every single creature they hit out of that, your commander is going to trigger, and you're going to get a token. Moving on, Minecrank says, whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. Obviously, in a game of Commander, players can lose life for a variety of reasons. Even if an opponent just utilizes, say, a fetch land or a shock land or casts a Sign in Blood or something like that, yeah, I mean, there's just going to be different instances, outside of combat where players are going to be losing life. But especially with combat, this can be very effective because when creatures are dishing out damage, again, that damage is being dealt separately for each creature. So let's say, you got a 3/3 hitting someone and a 1/1 hitting someone. You are going to be getting those triggers separately with this. And with those separate instances of life loss, those are different triggers, and therefore your commander is going to say, okay, I can make even more creature tokens based off of each of those sources of damage. Or should I say, these sources of damage that then cause Minecrank to trigger and mill. You know what I mean. Regardless, Altar Dementia is one that definitely came to mind as well, and this one also needs a reprint. Wizards, get on it, please. Thank you. Believe it or not, this card was basically budget at one point, and now it's back up to $9. Yeah. Regardless, its Oracle text reads, sacrifice a creature, target player mills cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power. Now, one other thing that I did want to mention with this commander, and I probably should have mentioned till now, but obviously there are plenty of ways for you to make your, creatures more impactful. Maybe you've got some Anthem effects in the deck as well to pump them. So throughout the game, your tiny 1/1 army can obviously grow to be more and more impactful. It's 2/2s or 3/3s, etc., etc., etc. And in combination with Altar Dementia, this can be very deadly. Now again, even just to start off, being able to sacrifice one of your little creature tokens and milling someone for 1 has the potential to, again, have them mill a creature to have you then again make another token, which you can then sacrifice to mill. So like Altar the Brood, this can really get things going. And again, the more and more power that your creatures have, again, if you have more anthems in play, the more you can mill for each of those instances. Moving on though, let's talk about a much more budget-friendly and still very powerful creature though with Lord of the Forsaken. It's a 6/6 flamfling demon that has pay a black, sacrifice another creature, target player mills 3 cards. And on top of that, pay 1 life, add colorless, spend this, may only cast spells from your graveyard. So if you've got spells with flashback, well, this card is absolutely incredible. Flashback, jumpstart, any of those. But yeah, for this deck, when you are utilizing it to its fullest, you are going to be utilizing it to mill players for a ton with your creature tokens. This is a fantastic repeatable way, again, for just a single black mana to utilize your creature token to mill a player for 3 to hopefully hit another creature so you can make another creature token. And essentially you can just keep doing this for all the black mana that you have. On top of this being, a 6/6 flampler that also can just utilize cards in your graveyard in a fantastic way. Moving on though, of course, let's talk about some repeatable mill effects with cards like Dreamborn Muse, Shadowkin, and Ghoulcaller's Bell. Dreamborn Muse Oracle text says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player mills X cards where X is the number of cards in their hand. Commander players tend to like to draw a decent amount of cards and have a pretty full hand, so yeah, this can milk players a lot throughout the game, and keep in mind this is at each player's upkeep, so yeah, with a 1 trip around the table, you have a very good chance of making 4 tokens with this. Speaking of which, there's Shadowkin, a 2/2 shapeshifter with flash that has the beginning of your upkeep, each player mills 3 cards. You may exile a creature card from among the cards milled this way. If you do, Shadowkin becomes a copy of that card except it has this ability. So obviously this can be a clone that kind of can clone in a different type of way, but obviously, just mill everyone for 3 at your upkeep. Yeah, you're destined to hit some creatures with that. So this definitely has the potential, again, of making you 4 creatures just for this being in play. Each turn. Each of your turns. You know what I mean? Even a smaller, but still very effective and low to the ground repeatable effect like Ghoulcaller's Bell can be very impactful. It's an artifact that has tap, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard, or again, mill 1. So this 1 mana artifact can generate us a ton of value throughout the game, and of course, again, if we've got ways to untap it, even more value. But our opponents can actually help us out as well with something like Riddle Keeper. It's a 1/4 that says, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So this creature can actually be pretty fantastic with our commander. Whenever a player attacks us with a creature, they mill 2. So if they attack us with, say, 5 creatures, they're milling 2 for each and every single one of those creatures. And again, those are separate triggers for our commander. So then we have the potential of making, 5 creature tokens? And again, we can just utilize those creatures to block the creatures that are actually attacking us too. Next up, Memory Erosion says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So now, even our opponents casting spells can just make us a ton of tokens throughout the game. And of course, in a multiplayer format like Commander, well, a lot of spells are bound to be cast. Next up, of course, we've got ways that we are more in control of that can help us mill our opponents just by, benefiting ourselves more with something like Psychic Corrosion. It says whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. This can be really absurd. I mean, even just think about, your initial draw on the turn. That is going to mill each of your opponents, again, assuming 3 opponents, for 2, and you've got the potential of making 3 tokens just off of that. Of course, since you're in blue, you're going to have access to the best card draw, essentially. So, yeah, you've got plenty of ways to draw a ton of cards and to get a ton of triggers off this to get a ton of tokens. And of course, keep in mind that there are ways out there to, maybe sacrifice creatures to draw cards and, get a ton of value out of those. And of course, keep triggering this to keep milling your opponents. And yeah, you can definitely mill your opponents pretty quickly once you're set up with this. I mean, even just a wheel. Think about a wheel. Everyone discarding all their cards, drawing 7, and then all your opponents milling, 14? But yeah, 7 2-mill triggers each, so 21 triggers in total for your commander? That has the potential to be very game-ending. And speaking of game ending, well, let's talk about a card like Fraying Sanity. It's an enchantment that's Oracle text reads, at the beginning of each end step, enchanted player mills X cards or X the number of cards put into their graveyard from anywhere this turn. So this essentially doubles up mill on an opponent, and again, instead of just doubling it up, right at the instance, which is still very effective if you're trying to mill a player out, this one is a separate instance of mill so you can get your commander's trigger again. So not only can this essentially speed up the process of milling a player out if that's what you're looking to do, but again, this is just, additional kind of free triggers for your commander. And speaking of your commander, 2 pretty expensive ways to take advantage of your commander's activated ability are with cards like Intruder Alarm and Thornbite Staff. Intruder Alarm says creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps, so whenever a creature comes into play, untap all creatures. So this one is pretty simple. Alright, I'm going to pay 1 to tap my commander to mill summon for 3. Awesome, I hit a creature, cool, I get a creature token. It comes into play, I untap my commander. Well, you untap every creature on the board, so yeah, obviously if you've got other activated abilities, you can take advantage of those. And yeah, of course, if you've got a mana dork, that can actually help pay for that ability as well to keep doing this again and again and again. Definitely very effective, but very expensive, and I just want to highlight it here. And kind of on the other end of things, Thornbite Staff says, equipped creature has pay 2, tap this creature deals 1 damage to our creature or player, and whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap this creature. So now all those little tiny 1/1s that you are making can help you, even when they are taken out. So maybe send them into combat, just swing out at players, or utilize them as chump blockers, or again, if you've got something like a free sacrifice outlet in play, this is where it can get really crazy. And again, keep in mind with this commander, you also get to choose a background to help give you access to another color, and also to give your commander, an additional effect, essentially. And I believe I only mentioned 1 card, actually, in this entire episode so far that is actually not in your commander's, initial color identity, with it being blue. So yeah, there are plenty of fantastic things you can already do with your commander, just as it is in blue, but sure, let's just add, a background to give you an extra color. So yeah, green might be a great option. There are plenty of great ways to mill in green, and Cloakwood Hermit is a fantastic background for this commander if that's your choice. It says, commander creatures you own have at the beginning of your end step, if a creature card was put in your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create 2 tap 1/1 green scroll creature tokens. So now, with this, you can get even more tokens for actually just milling yourself. And speaking of milling yourself, of course, black is another great direction to go, so yeah, Scion of Halaster might be your choice. It says, commander creatures you own have, the first time you would draw a card each turn, instead of looking at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them in your graveyard and the other back on top of your library, then draw a card. So this can be some fantastic card selection throughout the game with this background, and of course, on top of that, this can be another way to trigger your commander if you're putting creatures into your graveyard with this. Or you might go in a different direction with a background with Agent of the Iron Throne. It says, commander creatures you own have, whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So this can be incredibly deadly with this commander. Basically, again, you're going to be able to make a massive token army with your commander, and now when your creatures die, all your opponents get drained for a ton. Again, 3 life essentially, 1 for each opponent, for each creature that you are making. That can add up a lot throughout the game and can really take your opponents out. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think a lot of players out there are going to be really excited about Zellix Sanity Flayer. It's a very interesting commander that, again, benefits you for milling your opponents by giving you creature tokens, which, again, in combination with certain things, can help you mill your opponents further to give you more creature tokens. And, of course, with this commander, there is a good amount of flexibility as well, since you can choose a background, whichever one suits you, again, for that additional color that you want access to, or that additional effect that you want access to. So, yeah, this commander is pretty insane, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of players out there are going to be really excited about it. So, with that said, make sure you check out that link in the description below with every single card that I talked about on this episode. Also, make sure you check out my other exciting quick takes and spoilers coming up. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.